Welcome back, friends, and if this is your first time here, hi, I'm Betty, and this is the Well-Rounded Workshop. As you know, spring cleanup season usually means hauling things to the curb. For me, it means getting Chuck to slow down the truck while I'm rubbernecking through the neighborhood like somebody's giving away free lumber and power tools, because y'all know I just can't stand seeing perfectly usable things getting tossed away. Now, I only grabbed a few things this time since I didn't have the trailer with me, which honestly is probably for the best because I have very little self-control when it comes to curbside treasures. But these finds are a good reminder that not everything needs to end up in the landfill just because somebody's done with it. So today kicks off a 3-episode series of shorter videos where I'll show you a few of the items I rescued during a neighborhood spring cleanup and how I'm giving them a second life with a little cleaning, a few repairs, some paint, and a sprinkle of creativity. And today's episode is all about pots. Pots, pots, and more planter's pots. We've got the big ones, we've got the small ones, some fancy ones, and of course, some plain ones. Honestly, enough pots to start my own garden center. May is basically prime planting season, so can someone explain to me why all of these were sitting at the curb during spring cleanup? And right alongside them, I also found these 2 large jugs for watering. It really makes me wonder why things like this get tossed in the first place, especially right now when they're the most useful. I've already cleaned everything up, but a few of them will need a little extra love. For instance, this wooden planter with the plastic insert looks a little rough around the edges, but so do I some days, and I'm still hanging in there. I'm just going to nail this metal band back down, freshen it up with some black paint, and give the wood a protective top coat. The metal band on the bottom had pulled loose, so first I'm clamping everything back into place to pull it together nice and tight. Then I'm using my center punch to mark my holes so the drill bit doesn't wander all over the place on me. A few pilot holes later, and we're ready to screw the band back down properly. Now that it's solid again, I'm giving the metal a quick once-over with a wire brush to knock off any loose rust and flaky paint. I taped it off and I'm giving the band a fresh coat of black paint. Then I'm freshening up the wood with a little stain to help protect it from the weather. And just like that, it's looking pretty good and should be good for a few more years. And this big terracotta one, besides being faded, it's actually in great shape. A little timber oil will bring it right back to life. Now this large gray planter, I don't actually need a planter this big right now, but what I do need is a side table for my deck. So I'm thinking I'll flip it upside down, give it a fresh coat of gray paint, and then I'll use this granite piece that I picked up at a dump site for the top. You may remember it from my Earth Day video, and if not, this is your reminder to go back and watch it. I'll use a little silicone to hold it in place, and just like that, this thing will go from curbside cast-off to deck furniture. Now these are the pots I thought could really use a makeover, and most of them are the terracotta ones. I think I'll paint these 3 little pots bright colors with polka dots, and these 3 pots over here really in dire need of some sprucing up. I'll paint them, maybe put a stencil on them, maybe even some jute rope. This beaded one here, well, the pink has to go, so I'll play around with it. I'm not quite sure yet. And this little faded pink one. I love the pattern on the front, so it just needs a little refresh instead of a one-way trip to the dump. These little terracotta pots were looking a little plain and tired, so I figured they needed something fun. I gave them coats of blue, red, and green paint, and then grabbed a Q-tip to add some simple white polka dots. Honestly, sometimes the easiest little details end up making the biggest difference. Then I finished them off with a quick top coat to help protect the paint. And I mean, come on, how adorable did these turn out? These next terracotta pots were looking pretty sad and faded too, but I could see the potential in them right away. I started by giving them all a fresh coat of this beautiful bronze paint, which instantly warmed them up and made them look a little more modern. Then I wrapped the tops with some jute ribbon for a bit of texture and a softer look. And for the finishing touch, I made these little flowers out of jute rope and glued one onto each pot. And just like that, instead of 3 random old pots, they actually look like a matching little set. I decided this little pot needed a tiny pair of glasses and a little personality. To make the glasses, I just used some wire and this little container of lock de-icer since it was the perfect size to wrap around. I left a small piece of straight wire at the end, wrapped the wire around once, left a little gap, and then wrapped it around again for the second lens. Then I snipped it off with my wire cutters, and honestly, it made the cutest little pair of glasses. Now on to the face. I'm using a black paint marker, and let me just say right now, I am definitely not the world's greatest artist, so bear with me here. First up are the eyes, and honestly, they turned out better than I expected. Then I added a couple little lines for the nose, now onto the mouth. And I've got to admit, I think the lips turned out pretty good. Once the face was finished, I sprayed a top coat over everything to seal it in, then I glued on the little glasses and tied this colorful bandana over the beads, leaving a few sticking out at the front. And now it almost looks like little gray hairs peeking out. I really love how this one turned out. This last little pot already had a really nice design on the front, but the faded pink was looking pretty drab and washed out, so I decided to give it a little punch of color with this purple paint. And honestly, I think it works really well with this design. Then I finished it off with a quick top coat to help seal everything in, and just like that, I brought it back to life. I also found this big metal tub. A little rusted on the inside, yes, but no holes. I'm gonna wipe it out, clean it up, and give the inside a spritz of paint to freshen it up. Then I'll show you a few ideas of how I would use it. And here they are, all refreshed, and I think they turned out great. Even this planter turned side table came together better than I expected, and not bad for a couple of things somebody else tossed to the curb. And this old metal tub cleaned up pretty nicely too. A little paint on the inside and the rust is gone. I filled it with towels, but you could also use it for throws, gardening supplies, or line it with a plastic bag. Fill it with ice and drinks, and you've got yourself a great little barbecue cooler. And I gotta say, out of all the pots, this one turned out to be my favorite. I just think it's adorable, and it kind of reminds me of my mother-in-law. Now, of course, I'm not going to need all of these planters, and honestly, that's probably what the original owners were thinking too. But this is where I always say, get creative. You could use these for apples, napkins, cutlery for a summer barbecue, charcuterie picks, pencils, paintbrushes, makeup brushes, hair tools, crayons for the kids. Once you start thinking outside the pot, the ideas just keep coming. And let's face it, this video really isn't about pots. There's a much deeper meaning here. We really are a throwaway society, and honestly, we can do better, people, because my motto around here is pretty simple. If it's metal, wood, glass, or sometimes even plastic, there's a good chance it can be refreshed, reused, repaired, repurposed, or rehomed. Well, that's a wrap on episode 1 of my spring cleanup series. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, consider subscribing, and check back next week for episode 2 to see what else I rescue from the trash. Until then, keep your junk clean, your standards high, and your judgment out of the trash. And remember, most junk just needs a good wash, a little attention, and someone willing to get their hands on it. Bye for now.